This is We Bleed Orange and Black, the podcast for Halloween and horror lovers. Join us as we interview creators, discuss our favorite folklore, and share original spooky stories. I'm Jeff C. Carter. This week, we're talking with Allie Russell about her new book, Mystery James Digs Her Own Grave. Allie Russell is the author of the middle grade horror book It Came From the Trees and The Book of Outcasts, the official guide to Nevermore Academy for the Netflix show Wednesday. She hails from Pittsburgh, ground zero for the zombie apocalypse, where she grew up on a steady diet of Halloween parties, horror films, unsolved mysteries, and Goosebumps books. She lives with her husband and her two black cats, Knox and Fury. Allie, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me back. I had so much fun last time. I'm still thinking about Halloween.
That's good, then it worked. It's been a year since we hung out last time.
Has it been that long?
It has been a year.
Wow.
Tell me everything. What's new? What's old? What's a year old?
I feel like I've done so much because I think the last time we talked, I don't even think my Wednesday book had been announced the last time that we talked. I was just telling you, before we started the show, I have been to Texas because It Came From the Trees is huge in Texas. Texans love Bigfoot. They love Jenna. They love that whole story. And I've been to Philadelphia to hand out worms to librarians to promote Mystery James Digs Her Own Grave. And let me tell you, there's nothing that is more fun than like walking up to librarians and slapping worms in their hands. So I had a blast doing that. And then I've just been writing too, because Mystery James 2 is due soon. So I feel like I have no concept of time anymore. I cannot believe that it's been a full year, but that's what I've been up to, mostly writing.
Fantastic. So let's jump into the book. Mm-hmm. Can you read us a back of the book summary for Mystery James Part 1?
Yeah, so Mystery James Part 1, I'll try to keep it short because I feel like I sent my editor a list of everything spooky that was in the book, and I was fully prepared for her to say, this is too much, but she just kept nodding her head. So the short of it is that Mystery James Digs Her Own Grave is the story of Mystery James, and she was abandoned in a cemetery and raised in a funeral home by her adopted Tia Lucy. Her best friend Garrett lives around the corner. They live in Ellistown. It's a small town tucked in the hills of Pennsylvania. And Mystery and her aunt, they manage the old Ellistown cemetery across the street. Everything is going fine, except that recently Mystery has developed the ability to smell ghosts. They all have different scents. Some of them are kind of funky, like vinegar and skunks. And then some, there's like a more earthly smell in there, like eucalyptus or coffee beans, whatever. So she can smell ghosts. And even more recently than that, like she can now see ghosts. So the spirit of the town matriarch appears to Mystery and tries to warn her about something. It turns out she's trying to warn Mystery about a grave robbing. So something gets stolen from the old Ellistown cemetery. And of course, Mystery's family is being blamed. Small town, you can't have rumors like that. So Mystery knows that she needs to get to the bottom of who has stolen this important object from the cemetery. But hampering her efforts is a vampiric ghost. So she's got to solve the mystery and stop this vampiric ghost that is trying to leave the confines of the cemetery. So yeah, there's ghosts, there's vampires, there's graveyards, there's funeral home. Any ghoulish kid would love it, I think.
I think so too. Can you tell us how Mystery James differs from Jenna, who was the hero of your last book?
There are a fair number of differences between them. And it's funny because I always say one of the hardest parts of writing for me is making my main characters all stand out and be different from one another. But I feel like this just came kind of naturally. So thank you for asking this question because it made me realize that they're very distinct. Mm-hmm. So Jenna, she's 11, Mystery's 13. I know that doesn't seem like a big age difference, but we know middle grade is a big spectrum.
Oh yeah,
middle grade is a big spectrum, right? So ages 8 to 12. What an 8-year-old is dealing with in life is very different from what a 12 or 13-year-old is dealing with in life.
Especially girls.
So there's that. Yeah. And when you hit that teen, having the teen after, that's a big deal. So, another difference is that Jenna's story is very rooted in the natural world. She's out in the woods. The cryptid creature that she encounters is a very physical being, a physical object. Mystery's story is rooted more of a supernatural world. There are ghosts. She can smell them. There are vampires. We can assume other spooky things if, there are ghosts and vampires, and she calls a cemetery her backyard. So they have those differences. And then another one that I've been thinking about too is like just the element of friendship in both books. In It Came from the Trees, Jenna and Reese, their friendship is pretty, standard. Like there are no prickly moments. They are friends. We start to see some of that when a secret is revealed to Jenna in It Came from the Trees, that her best friend ran away at one point and her best friend never told her. So we start to see the beginnings of that as like they're growing older. But in Mystery James Digs Her Own Grave, I think that the friendship between Mystery and Garrett is a bit more contentious. And I would attribute that to like, they would both like do anything for each other, but they're getting older. You're dealing with hormones and mood swings and like life changes. Like this is the point in time where, friend groups start to change as you go between like 8th grade and like high school, and there's more people. So I think that is one of the major differences between the two. And then with Garrett and Mystery, all of those issues are like compounded by or complicated by like the supernatural.
But also Garrett is a straight A student with really strict parents, which is a total contrast to Mystery. It's not that Tia Lucy doesn't love her, but she is a foundling child and she's already an outcast.
Yeah. And she definitely gets a lot more freedom because she's got more responsibility. Like Tia Lucy is one person. She can't be in two places, at once. So she's got stuff that she needs to do for the business. Mystery, part of her role in the household, like, yeah, she's, Tia Lucy considers her a niece, a daughter, but she's got to help with the family business. So she's just afforded a little more freedom. Whereas Garrett, I think Garrett is modeled a little more after like my upbringing. He's got all the siblings. He's got 3 siblings. I have 3 siblings. And I remember when I was a kid growing up, I was just thinking about this because there were some kids playing on like the front street, and they don't live like on this street. I think they live like a couple streets over, but I live in like a fairly like quiet, small neighborhood. And I was just thinking like, man, when I was a kid, I was never allowed to go that far from home. And I think Garrett is definitely like modeled after my upbringing in that sense.
I think one similarity between Jenna and Mystery is that they're both searching. Jenna is searching for her missing friend, and Mystery is searching for everything. She's searching for her origins. She's searching for community and connection. She's searching for safety. She seems pretty well adjusted when we meet her, but then once the hits start coming, she's not sure she does belong or if Tia Lucy really will be there like she promises to be.
Yeah, and I think it's tough because they're both searching for different things and they have different support systems. Jenna is obviously searching for her best friend, but her mom is normally her support system. And there's a lot of this in the book where like she and her mom used to be so close and now they're not necessarily because she feels like her mom doesn't believe her. And we get some of that too in Mystery James, with her aunt's like, you're not smelling ghosts. Like, like I don't know what it is, but you're not smelling ghosts. Mystery, another thing she struggles with is a sleep demon. And her aunt is like, you're not being visited by a sleep demon. It's, it's just like your brain is waking up before your body and it's really scary. So like they both have similar support systems, but I think they're dealing with a lot of the same issues. And again, the whole friendship aspect, I think they are both searching for community. That one person for Jenna, that one person is Reese. And now that Reese has been like taken out of the equation and she's not very close to her mom in that particular book, it's hard for her. So she's searching for the one person that feels like home to her. And I think Mystery, it takes her a little bit longer to realize that in the book, Mystery James Digs Her Own Grave, but she eventually comes to the conclusion that home is Garrett, home is Tia Lucy, that is her family, even though, and she can still search, for her birth mother, but like she has that community right in front of her.
There is a map right in the front of the book, and that made me so happy when I saw it. Oh, that's so cool. You've got a full-size map there. Is there a place that inspired the town of Ellis?
I keep trying to think of like a town that feels like Ellistown, and I can't think of anything that feels like exactly like it. Like Ellistown feels like a very distinct place in my mind. And I guess it's really just like a mashup of like, or a blend of every small town and cemetery I've ever visited. I think about like the cemetery more, and I would say that like the cemetery for the old Ellistown Cemetery is heavily inspired by Mount Auburn Cemetery in Cambridge, Mass. Just because I like spent so much time there. It's like a mix of that and Laurel Hill Cemetery in Reading, Mass. Because I spent a lot of time in those two places during the pandemic. But Ellistown itself, I think, just feels like every like small town that I've ever been in, watched on TV. Like it just feels like a mix of all of them.
It does have a nice sort of old New England feel to it.
Yeah, like I can definitely see that. I didn't want to like make it too much about Massachusetts because it's set in Pennsylvania, but like when I was thinking about this earlier today, there are parts of Massachusetts like outside of like Boston, like Brookline or something, that feel like their own like very like small towns. Like they feel like even though like it's connected to like the larger part, like you can access all of them on the T. The further out that you go in Massachusetts, like everything feels like it's its own little like bubble, and it's kind of cute, kind of quaint. So I hope that Ellistown feels that way for readers.
So you were talking about the long list of spooky things that you sent to your editor. Some of these are between the chapters. These little interstitials, there's info on funerary customs and mortuary science. Is this just stuff that you've always been researching, or did you do extra research for the book?
I think some of it is stuff that has like just been in my head, just weird stuff that I know for absolutely no reason. But then other stuff, it like I did research, I had to research mortuaries and cemeteries and funeral homes and funeral practices. I interviewed two morticians. One of them was just like starting out in their career. And then the other one was Sarah Chavez. And I don't know if do you know the Order of the Good Death?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So she's the executive director of Order of the Good Death. And for those who don't know, they're like an organization that in their aim is really make people comfortable with the culture and comfort of like and knowledge around death. Like it doesn't have to be this like taboo subject that we just don't talk about until it happens. That's actually a big problem in this country. People not like preparing for where their earthly goods and like your money and like if you have children or pets or your house, not enough people prepare for that. So like their aim is really to like make people comfortable with the concept of death because it's going to happen to everyone. So yeah, I did a ton of research. I've read Over My Dead Body, Unearthing the Hidden History of America's Cemeteries by Greg Melville, and that was like such a fantastic, interesting book about like the history of cemeteries and like everything that is happening with like cemeteries today and like death practices today and like how we are like running out of like cemetery space. So like we need to think of other ways that we can ferry people, for lack of a better word, from this life to the next and like keep their bodies and their memories safe. Yeah, I did a fair amount of research.
Was it important for you to tackle the subject of death for a middle grade audience?
I think so. With the pandemic, the country experienced like a ton of death, a lot of collective grief. So it felt like an appropriate time to talk about the subject because we've not like been through like a pandemic quite like what we went through in like 2020. So I think a lot of young people have questions, concerns about death. I experienced my first death. I think I was 10 when my grandma passed, and I had a lot of big feelings about it. And like I wish I'd had like more people to talk, like obviously like I could talk to my parents and like my siblings, but like they're not grief counselors or anything like that. And people can only tell you so much because we don't know what happens after we have our beliefs, but factually like no one actually like knows what happens after you are gone. And so like there are a lot of questions that can't be answered. So I wish I had somebody to talk to more about that kind of stuff. I would have liked to have read something from the perspective of a character like Mystery to help me like work my way through some of those questions and thoughts that I was having, or help me, develop my own. So I think, yeah, it's important because it's one of those things where it's like, you can't escape it. I know a lot of kids, they do not think about their own mortality. Not all, there are some who do think about it, but not all kids think about it. So I hope that like in the spirit of like the Order of the Good Death, like it's not about scaring kids with the concept of death. It's just one of those things where it's like, it's going to happen to everybody at some point. So even pets too.
What was your process, or how did it go working with your editor to figure out how much was appropriate for the younger audience?
I think that's a tough one because, my editor and I are very much of the mindset that like I'm specifically writing for the older end of the middle grade spectrum. So I am of the mindset that like when I was a kid, I was reading a lot of horror that was probably like way above my reading level, my reading comprehension. So I feel I compare it to that and I'm like, okay, if I could handle some of those things when I was that age, maybe kids today can handle some of that. And I'm hearing this, from librarians too. Like when I was in Texas, when I was in Philadelphia for ALA, like I'm hearing this from librarians that like kids do want, especially like in that like 10 to 12 age range, like they do want scarier books. So I feel like my editor and I are of the same mindset where it's like, let's push it a little bit and like see. There are certain things where like in the second mystery, James, I had a particular scene, I won't spoil it, but I thought it was maybe a bit too much after I wrote it. And my editor was like, I think it's fine. So it's really hard to like, I don't know how to like gauge it. Like all I can do is write what I'm writing. I do think hard about whether or not it's going to like sit well with readers of that age group. And I'm still, a big believer that like kids of that age group, they will self-censor. If it is too much for them, they will very much close the book. And we're talking about like what is appropriate too. And it's like one of the major themes in this book is like two of the major themes are death and grief. And it's hard to say like whether or not they're appropriate because if you're 10 years old, death doesn't care that you're 10 years old. Like if it takes somebody in your life, somebody who's close to you, doesn't care if it's appropriate or not. It's going to happen.
It's interesting that Mystery is not grieving a loved one that she's lost. She's grieving a loved one she's never had. The wound that she carries is that she doesn't know her mother and she doesn't know why she was abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
The easier story beat would have been, oh, she had a friend or relative that died and she's grappling with it. But there's this larger mystery that makes her question her own identity. It's a very interesting spin on grief.
Yeah, it is an interesting spin on grief because it is like, I think we think that like when we are grieving something, you're grieving something that you've lost, but it's also possible to grieve something that you've never had. And as you said, she's not known her mom in that sense. And I think that Mystery, in my perspective as the author, I think she handles her grief as well as any 13-year-old can. And I think she gets a lot of that from like watching the people around her grieve because she's encountering it every day. There's a scene in the book where she remembers, holding someone's hand at a funeral. So I think that it just hits her differently because of her lifestyle, because of her upbringing, as opposed to somebody like Jenna, who like when she loses her best friend, like this is her first experience with grief. It's like Mystery's gotten like a taste of it. So she processes it differently throughout her young teen years.
You have another fun spin on a take here. Spin on a take? That's not a thing. You have another fun spin in the book, which is the way you explore the concept of being undead with the Baron. In a lot of stories with the vampire, if they get a stake through the heart, it's sort of an on-off switch. Buffy vampire will just poof into dust.
Poof. Right.
Other vampires are just inert, and then you pull the stake out, and then boom, they come back to life. But the Baron is truly undead. Can you talk a bit about the way you handle that in the book?
Well, I think it's like no one actually knows like what happens after we are gone. And I really wanted to like explore that idea in terms of like the supernatural and mysteries world where, she's smelling ghosts. So she knows that like there's something beyond, this earthly realm that she lives in with her aunt and at the funeral home. So I really wanted to try to explore that because I feel like vampires in media are either one or the other. They're either like these highly physical beings where, like you said, stake through the heart and then bam, they're gone, or they're these kind of like mystical things that can like appear in like a poof of smoke, or they turn into like a bat. And like it's like either or for the most part. And then you've got like the whole lore, and we cover this in the book too, where is it like an affliction of the body where like if you're bitten by a vampire, it's like venom that goes into you and then there's like a physical transformation, or is it supernatural, kind of spiritual, where like you're linked psychically, and like if you're bitten by a vampire and then that main vampire dies, all the other vampires, in that line die too. So I kind of try to like fuse the two a little bit, where it's like Baron essentially has like one leg in this world and one in the next, just because that's how I feel about like the concept of death. Like we don't actually like know what it is. We don't know how to make sense of it. So it felt interesting to me to explore that, because I don't think I've seen that done with vampires who are like dancing between like a ghostly form and like a physical form. And it's painful, like it's physically painful for Baron to like be half here and half there, and like when he interacts with like physical objects in our world, it's like he's not supposed to be touching them. Like at one point, he grabs Mystery's wrist, and it's an uncomfortable experience for him. So yeah, I just wanted to try to play around with that, because I didn't want to try to like set any like definitive vampire lore, because then the vampire enthusiasts will like freak out. Like, that's not how vampires work. And this is the thing, it's fiction, it can work however I want it to work. So
But also the vampire, I was just saying this with Keith Rawson, the vampire is the most protean monster out there. Everyone can put their own spin on it and invent their own lore. And then I was listening to an interview with Stephen Graham Jones, and he was talking about how the vampire is like a snowball that's been rolling downhill and just gradually picking up random bits and pieces.
That's true.
Why would a vampire be able to hypnotize you or put you under a glamour? It's just a power that got added at some point and no one questioned it. So I think everyone's allowed to put a spin on a vampire.
I appreciate that. I think sometimes I spend too much time online, and there are some people who are very like precious about how they view certain creatures in the mythology. Like, vampires can't do this and werewolves can't do that. And I'm like, they are like creatures of fiction. We can make them do whatever we want them to do. And so with Baron, I really wanted to explore this idea of like, well, he can do supernatural stuff because he is partly in this other world that we go to after this one, but also kind of not, because he's a vampire. He doesn't like really have a soul anymore. But then he's also like a physical being, because a physical being to me is like scarier sometimes than like something that's like just supernatural. Like if it's just the ghosts, oh, I'm going to wave my hand, have an exorcism, whatever, and you'll be gone. But like if it's something like physical that like can grab you by the wrist, you're not going to be able to get rid of it that easily.
So It Came from the Trees was a complete story. Mystery Digs Her Own Grave, part 1 of 2. Was this always a bigger idea and you knew you were going to have to break it up? Or did you set your sights on a more epic story with deeper mysteries?
Knew it was going to be a big story that I was going to have to break up. So when I pitched it to my editor, like the synopsis was so long. It was like, oh man, it was like over like 10 to 15 pages long. Like it was long. So I had to like figure out like how I was going to break that into, and like which parts of the mystery I was going to like have in the first book and then move to the second book, because I really wanted Ellistown to be like a very distinct thing in people's minds and a character. Honestly, like I wanted to make Ellistown a character in the story. That alone, like the world building for that, it's going to take a lot more space than a book as small as like Trees might allow for. So that, I mean, I've never written a duology. I'm still a new little baby author. So this has been a challenge for me, like trying to figure out like, oh, where is the dividing line? Like, how do I make this a true duology? Like, what parts need to connect between the first and the second? So my goal with this is to like tell a complete story in each individual book, but then each book is made richer by the other. So like when you read Mystery James Digs Her Own Grave, you will, by the end of it, you'll think to yourself, that question didn't get answered. So hopefully it'll be answered, in the second book. And then that's it for now. My absolute dream would be for Mystery to do so well that like then I get to write one-off mysteries about Mystery James. That's my dream. I get to write like, they'd be shorter, like Goosebumps length, but like that's the goal for people to love mystery that much, that they just want to like stay in Ellistown and in her world.
Can you tell us a bit about the cover art for this?
Yeah, the cover art is by Devin Forst. And I've got his calendar on the wall behind me. He does like this calendar of witches every season, every year. His new one for 2026 is coming out soon. So when I was trying to, like, when you are my publisher in particular, like they will ask me ahead of time, like, hey, what are you thinking for like the book cover? Do you want like a photograph? Do you want something that's a little like more artsy, like with illustration? What are you thinking? So like I fill out this long document, and then I can like pitch people that I might want to like do the cover. And so at one point, Devin had posted some of his artwork of like a vampire, and I think the vampire had like a forked tongue, and it was just really gross and like creepy looking. And Devin had put, I just designed this for fun if anybody's writing a vampire book. And I was like, I'm totally writing a vampire book. So I pitched him to my publisher. I was like, I really love it. I think his style, like he's got like a kind of like an ethereal, wispy, smoky, supernatural, otherworldly kind of style. And I thought he would be perfect for mystery. And he nailed that cover, I think. Like he got Baron down, he got mystery down, like he got like this like crooked, crowded cemetery with all these like tombstones, like pointing this way and that down. You haven't seen the full cover, but like I think if I'm remembering correctly, and they haven't changed it, Garrett is on the back cover, and Garrett's looking scared in the cemetery. So like he did a wonderful job.
With mystery being able to smell ghosts and then presenting the Baron as this sort of sickly vapor, this sort of corruption coming out of the cemetery. It's so cool. I just love how green and serpentine and otherworldly the Baron is.
I think so. I think it's almost like Devin pulled him out of my head and put him on the cover. We wondered if he was too scary looking for a middle grade cover, but I think he's like the perfect level of scary, creepy. Just this, he's like a ghastly thing. And Devin nailed it.
Awesome. Did you want to get into sleep paralysis?
Yeah, we can talk about it. I wrote some stuff down about it, so we could chat.
Let's hear it.
Okay. So sleep paralysis is a frightening subject in the book, and not everybody has experienced sleep paralysis, but I have experienced it exactly 3 times in my life, and I remember all 3 times because it was so terrifying. So the second and third time were in college. They were far less terrifying than the first time. But the first time, I was probably 16 or 17. I was still living at home with my parents. And I am terrified of the dark, Jeff. You should know this about me. I think it's in my bio. Terrified of the dark. So my sister and I slept on the 3rd floor. We had our own rooms, and then they were like connected by a hallway. And I used to sleep with the hallway light on because I'm that afraid of the dark. So I woke up one night, and it was probably like 3 a.m., close to it. And I did that thing. My brain woke up before my body, and I could not move. And I had never experienced this before. And it was absolutely terrifying, so upsetting. Woke up, but I didn't feel like I was alone in the room by myself. Like I felt like somebody else was hovering in the room in the corner. And I got like a vision of someone in my mind. It was like a bigger, huskier guy. He had on like a t-shirt. He was balding. He was just like kind of lurking in the corner. And I don't know why. I don't know why that's like the specific image that like came into my head, but he was just kind of standing there. And of course, I started to panic because I couldn't open my eyes. And then when I eventually could get my eyes to open, like when my brain synced up with my body, there was nobody there. But you could not convince me that there hadn't been someone standing in that corner. So like I ran down to my parents' room, I'm 16, 17. I woke both my parents up. That's how like afraid I was. And that was my very first experience with like sleep paralysis. And then the times that it happened after that, it wasn't as scary. Like you still have that feeling of like there's nothing worse than feeling like somebody's in the room with you and you can't do anything. Like your body is just completely immobile, but you're like aware of everything that's happening. So that was one of the big influences for like writing mystery. That and I think it's Henry Fuseli, The Nightmare Painting, where it's like the woman draped over the bed with like the sleep demon on her chest. Like that painting in particular has always like, I don't know, like made me react to it. And like I've always had like a visceral reaction to that painting. So that was like one of the things, like those two elements inspired the sleep paralysis and Mystery James, because I experienced it when I was a teenager. And I was like, well, Mystery does not have enough problems. Clearly she needs one more. She needs sleep paralysis. There's a documentary called, I think it's called The Nightmare, like the painting. It's all about the Hat Man and sleep paralysis and all those like scary subjects.
I only found out about the Hat Man recently. It became sort of an internet meme. Like when I grew up, the Hat Man was not a thing, but now it's like, oh, I drank too much NyQuil and now I'm going to see the Hat Man.
I don't remember if it was a thing or not when I was growing up. Maybe it was one of those things that just kind of popped up, or like over like Black-Eyed Kids, like, you know, kind of over time, like a more recent thing, like with the invention of like Reddit or something like that. I don't know, but like he's very intertwined with like sleep paralysis lore now.
Yeah.
When I grew up, it was like sleep. When I researched, you know, what had happened to me, like the sleep paralysis, it was like old hag syndrome was what it was called. It was like, oh, there's like a ghostly spirit of a woman sitting on your chest kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I guess you're right. Like the Hat Man's kind of new in that respect, maybe.
You'll be hag-ridden the next day. Yeah. You'll be tired because someone is leeching your life essence.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I wonder how many like teenagers this happens to.
And can you incept a teenager by freaking them out with stories about the Hat Man? You know, they're up all night scrolling on their phone, getting blasted with blue light, and then they wake up and they're more likely to see the Hat Man.
There you go.
But that's how he gets you.
All right, I'm going to have nightmares tonight, so I don't want to talk about the Hat Man anymore. I don't know. I can't explain it. I don't know. Like this has happened to me twice in my life where I have like imagined something and then I've had like a very clear picture of what it was. One of my old apartments in Brighton, Massachusetts, I think that place was haunted. I have a video of Knox where when we first got Knox, my cat, he's like stepping out of a box, but then he looks over my shoulder. And the only thing over my shoulder at that time was a wall, but he walks out of this box and his eyes are like saucers and he's staring right over my shoulder. So I think that place was haunted. But in that place, I also like some people call it like a third eye, where like you see something in like your mind's eye. And I had this like vision. I was like, oh, what if this place is like haunted? And then immediately I had this vision of a guy also in a white t-shirt. I don't know what it is about a white t-shirt, guy in a white t-shirt. And he was shorter than me, but he was like looking up at me, kind of leering at me, and he went, "Oh!" And it was really scary to me, but it was in my mind. Like it wasn't something I actually saw. It was just like my brain conjured this like very frightening image. And I feel like that is what happened with the sleep paralysis episode in my room, where like my brain, for whatever reason, just conjured a very specific image of someone. But it was long before I met you, Jeff. So you do not have to worry. You are not my sleep demon. You're good.
That's good to know. So I guess I would be remiss if I didn't ask, do you believe in ghosts? Have you had any supernatural encounters?
Yes, I do believe in ghosts, just because I don't know what happens to our energy when we move from this life to the next. There are too many ghost stories out there. Everyone can't be lying. I kind of feel that way about Bigfoot, right? Which I think we've talked about this before, where I'm like, everybody can't be lying. Like somebody's got to be telling the truth. I don't know, outside of the like sleep paralysis episodes and other things that have happened to me, like in the stages of sleep, which I wouldn't call ghostly experiences. I just call those, like, you know, you talked about like your brain trying to transition from this like plane where anything is possible to our world. So I would not, you know, attribute those to like ghost experiences, but like I've heard too many stories, too many weird things. I grew up in a family where ghost stories were like very that was a common topic at dinner. People would gather around and talk about ghosts. And like one of the scariest ghost stories that I remember my dad telling me, because my dad was one of 10 kids. And so like he was the youngest, all of his brothers were older. And that was the thing in the family. Like you tried to scare people. No wonder I'm spooky. So like one of the scariest stories I remember them telling me though, is that like they were all sitting around watching TV one night and it was summertime. So like they had the screen door, they had the front door open, but like the screen door was like closed. And the screen door opened just when they started a scary program. The screen door opened. They heard like footsteps walk across the floor, and then the couch sank in. And then when the program was over, the seat raised up, the feet went back toward the door, screen door opened, and that was it. And I don't know if they like made that up, but that story used to frighten me so much. And I like to think that it's true. So yeah, I don't see how I would have been raised in like my household and not be somebody who believes in ghosts.
I don't see a contradiction here, but some people might be confused that you believe in ghosts and you do spend a lot of time in cemeteries and graveyards of your own volition.
Ghosts need company too. No, I just really like cemetery. Like I said, I've never seen anything. Unfortunately, I was not like blessed with an actual third eye for like seeing ghosts or like entities. I can't smell ghosts like Mystery. That'd be really cool. But I find cemeteries very calming. We were talking about third spaces, the loss of third spaces, and the library is one of few that we have left. We used to have a lot more in like the 80s and 90s. You had malls that you could walk around and, arcades, that sort of thing. There aren't too many left. And so cemeteries are one of those places where you can go, and if you need peace, quiet, you should be respectful when you go, but you can go into a cemetery and just sit and read or, take photos or just be out in nature. When the pandemic happened, we had just moved into a new apartment, and luckily the apartment was 5 minutes walk up the road from a cemetery, Laurel Hill Cemetery. And that place saved me so many times during the pandemic. Like when our apartment just felt too small and too cramped and I could hear everything that was like happening downstairs, we went to the cemetery. Like that was the place that brought us like the most comfort, and it was beautiful too, and it was quiet. There's like kids on bikes and like people just doing their own things. So you go in the daytime. Cemeteries close at dusk for a reason, and I think it's so that the ghosts can come out after that. So
in the past, cemeteries were very much communal spaces where people would go and picnic and tend to graves. It was very, very natural to make cemeteries and graveyards just an everyday part of your lives. And then there was a cholera outbreak. The belief was contact or proximity to the dead was spreading disease. And so they shut down all the cemeteries and they banned people from hanging out, having picnics, things like that. That began a slow divide in the public consciousness where people thought, oh, the cemetery is a sacred space. It's hallowed ground, and you don't go there unless you are burying someone. And then you leave immediately. And you shouldn't go there. You shouldn't be talking. There should be no music or laughter or anything. Don't step on a grave. Like we were talking about the Order of the Good Death, we've just become so completely blind to the existence of death, at least in America. I think it's different in other countries. And I think that has led to a lot of problems. And so I love to see people who will take a stroll, read a book, or ideally go tend to graves, because even if your relatives are dead and gone, keeping their memory alive and just keeping contact with the presence of death and the concept of death and your own mortality, it will change your outlook on life. If you're not walking around every day thinking, I'm invulnerable, I'm never going to die, and if I do, I can take it all with me. It's like this rant that just sort of keeps popping up. So sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I was talking to, do you know Jocelyn Kottner? She is in Pittsburgh. She's a librarian, and we were just talking about like this concept of like cemeteries being public spaces versus private. I did not know that about the cholera outbreak and, cemeteries becoming like places where you did not hang. So thank you for that. You're always so knowledgeable about everything. But Jocelyn, we were talking about this, and she had mentioned that like a lot of cemeteries that like she knows of that like used to be like places where people could just like walk through, like they're being bought by new owners, and then they're being like privatized. So they're being like closed up, and like you can't go there unless you have like a loved one in the ground. I think that's really sad, because if you're just using the space, like, yes, our loved ones need a quiet place to like rest, but I don't see any harm if you're being respectful, and walking the pathways or doing something, like where you're clearing old ivy or whatever, like debris, whatever, off of a grave or a tombstone. It just feels like a missed connection of sorts if humans cannot interact with their loved ones and the deceased in that way. It just feels sad to me, like a loss for both sides.
I agree. I have a question for you. I let you cheat. I asked you this question in advance. What is one of your favorite Halloweeny songs?
I am very glad that you did let me cheat, because I have what I think is a good answer. I do not know the title of the song.
Wow.
But it is a song in my head. So
Sing it.
I said, I can't even sing it because it's like musical instruments. So I sent you a YouTube clip. Did that come through?
I do have a message here.
Okay.
We could try to pipe it in.
When I was growing up, cable and TV, were still a thing. Everything wasn't streaming. And the thing that signaled Halloween to me, like this is it is Halloween now. The thing that made my brain switch from black to orange, because I'll say like orange, that makes my brain pop. But the thing that signaled that it was Halloween was the Reese's Halloween commercial with the Reese's candy, and it was like laughing, and it was like a really evil, sinister laugh. And then there's this fantastic Halloween music in the background. I don't know what it's called. I'm sure that like somebody knows the name of it, but I figured I would share it with you because that to me, like when I hear this noise, it's Halloween.
Oh, I do want to identify that song.
Isn't that perfect?
That is perfect. It's so funny because I've talked about this before, but growing up, we didn't have Hot Topic shotgunning us with Halloween months in advance or Target or, anything like that. We had a very, very limited window, a few weeks in October to see or get anything Halloweeny. To the point that when I saw, a cardboard stand-up of Elvira with like a Coors Light or something, I would get really excited. That sounds bad. But like if I saw a display of like Reese's Pieces or something like that, even that packaging would signal Halloween. If you weren't parked in front of the TV to watch the Charlie Brown special, you may not see any Halloween shows. Mm-hmm. Everything was sort of catch as catch can back then, and every bit of Halloweeniness was so precious that when I was very young, I would get the Caldor's catalog. I would take scissors and I would cut out the bats and things for all the candy advertisements. Like if there was a little cartoon Frankenstein, I was cutting that thing out and saving it. Starved for Halloween.
Every time we talk, I am reminded that we are kindred spirits because you just said cutting. I'm not going to get it right now. I'll send you a photo after, but I have a binder in the closet where when I was a kid, like all my stories went into this binder. Like we had just gotten the internet, a computer, and a printer. And man, I was printing out clip art like it was nobody's business and like ink was free. So I would like all my stories went into this binder, but the outside of the binder, it's made up of like 13 Dead End Drive cards. Do you remember Parade Magazine? Like the little Parade Magazine Halloween advertisements, TV Guide Halloween advertisements, just all these little things that I would cut out. Like, oh, there's a mummy, there's a jack-o'-lantern. Like I would cut them all out in addition to clip art and like pasted them to this because as you said, starved for Halloween. Exactly. It was not, oh, you like now as an adult, like I know that I have to, if I want to buy Halloween stuff, I have to start buying it in mid-July because that's when it goes out. And then by October, the Christmas stuff is out. So I have to start getting it very early. But like you said, when we were younger, it was not like that. Like even something like AMC Fear Fest, that just came on in September, like September, October-ish. Like it wasn't like 6 months to Halloween. We're playing, 6 months worth of horror movie. Like, no, it was not that. So yeah, you're right.
Crumbs.
I don't know. I'm not complaining, but also, because more Halloween, but like also I kind of miss that element of it.
It's such a double-edged sword because everything back then was more precious. and you would get a Halloween sound effects cassette and you would just listen to it over and over again, or record a Halloween special or a Halloween episode of Roseanne and watch that until the tape ran out because you had no other choices. So the things were more precious, but we were in a scarcity mindset. And so is it good to have a scarcity mindset? Not always. Maybe sometimes more is more. But when I see kids who can just, we've got The Grinch streaming, we can just watch it whenever and then, or it's on TV, who cares?
Exactly. Like I love Hocus Pocus still. I don't watch Hocus Pocus nearly as much as I used to when I was a kid because it's on all the time. I could go to Disney Channel anytime I want and watch Hocus Pocus. And that takes some of the Halloween magic away from it for me anyway. So yeah, no, I agree. I'm not complaining because more Halloween is more Halloween. But like also, I think I just want some of that magic back where it's like, there's a chill crisp in the air and then suddenly, boom, it's Halloween because you've seen the Reese's Halloween commercial.
Halloween is literally, by its essence, pinned to a time of year and a setting and a mood. And Always On Halloween does blur those lines a bit. It does water it down. And I know a lot of people who just, every day is Halloween, and that's cool. But if I met someone for whom every day was Christmas, I would cross the street to get away from that person. Like, it's a little weird. There's a time and place.
I let everybody have their thing.
Yeah, let people enjoy things.
Only because like I feel like I was like questioned so much throughout my like young years about like, why do you like ghosts and why are you reading so much stuff about UFO? Like, so I let everybody like their stuff. But I think to some degree I am with you. Like, it takes the magic away from it sometimes if it's like a all year constant thing. Like this new concept, and I hope people don't hate me for this, but like Val-o-ween, and how every Summerween I can get behind because I know it's attached to like a cartoon and there's like a funny element to it. But every other holiday does not need to be Halloween. Like, I just want Halloween to stay Halloween.
As they clear the shelves in October and bring out the Christmas trees, it does create a sort of lawless Wild West or Wild-ween experience where it's like, fuck it, game on. If you're going to come for Halloween in October, guess what? We're backing this shit up to July 5th. Spooky season starts when the last firework pops. But then it just keeps going because we'll take down Valentine's Day, Easter-ween, New Year's-ween. You can push it pretty far. Halloween has legs. This is an Americanized holiday that is just running roughshod over the globe. Every culture that comes into contact with Halloween crumbles.
Yes. One might say that it has giant 12-foot skeleton legs. So yes, you are right.
And so while I like to cheer this monster on that we've created, I do hold sacred this autumnal season.
Yes.
It is a twilight holiday. It is the space between summer and winter. It is a time of reflection. It's harder and harder to draw a line around that and hold that intact. And one of the reasons is that trick-or-treating is popular among some groups, but it's going away in places where it's just not walkable.
I just moved into like my very first house. And one of the first things I did in October was I went and I bought full-size candy bars. Full-size candy bars. Do you know we did not get a single trick-or-treater that first year? It was heartbreaking. So last year we sat outside and we had like a big cauldron of candy that like cackled when you went up to, I didn't do full size because like felt like a waste and it was too much chocolate for us after Halloween. But you know how cool the full-size candy bar house was when you were a kid, and I wanted to be that person and I did not get to be that person.
That's heartbreaking. I bet the day after Halloween, that was so awesome. Like, oh my God, we have these full-size candy bars. And then 3 days after Halloween, you're like, oh, No.
My husband was like, "What? This is too much shot." I said, "Take it to the office." And he's like, "Everybody's Halloween candy is in the office." I was like, "Well, you'll be the coolest because you've got full size, Hershey's bar."
That's right. If you can't be the cool house with the full-size candy bar, you can be the cool office with the full-size candy
Exactly.
bars. I love that.
Exactly.
Just to close the loop, one of my favorite Halloween-y songs is It's Almost Halloween by Panic at the Disco. Do you know this one?
I know Panic at the Disco, but I don't think I've heard that song.
Screen share. This is fun, doing a screen share. All right, here we go.
It's almost Halloween, and all my friends are wondering what they're gonna be. The monster mash is playing, you're moving to the beat, and now we're gonna teach you to do the trick or treat. Everybody scream, everybody scream. It's almost Halloween, do the trick or treat, do the trick or treat. It's almost
It's got great fall vibes. They've got old school costumes on. They're dancing in the woods. There's a Halloween costume party. It always gets me in the mood for Halloween.
I am in support of this. That was awesome. I felt like I traveled back to the 2000s. I did not know about that song.
Fantastic. Do you have any Halloween plans for this year?
Well, this year I am going to be in Massachusetts in early October for the first time in like 2 or 3 years. I'm really, really excited about it. I'm going to do all the things that I normally do when I used to live in Massachusetts in October. So that's like going to look at giant pumpkins. There's a Wegmans up there that like where they do like one of the giant pumpkins that we talked about, like the Atlantic giants. They grow huge and they have it like a huge pallet. So I'm going to go see that if they have it. I'm going to go to Wilson's to eat some cider donuts and look at more pumpkins. I'm also going to check out Salem. I know like the back streets, so I know where to park. So it's like usually not an issue for me. I'm going to check out Salem, and then I'm going to check out some indie bookstores to see if Trees and Mystery James are on the Halloween displays. And then also I'm going to Massachusetts because I'm doing an event at Copper Dog Books in Beverly, Mass. So that's going to be an event for Mystery James. And I'm doing that with my friend, Josh Roberts. He is the author of the Witches of Willow Cove series. He's also trying to write for the tail end of the middle grade spectrum. You should talk to him. You guys would get along, I think. But he's going to moderate the conversation because he grew up in a funeral home. So I feel like he is perfect. There are going to be tombstones and treats. So if anybody is up that way, Friday, October 10th at 7 p.m., you can swing by Copper Dog Books in Beverly, Mass. It's not very far from Salem. It's probably like 10 minutes tops. And other than that, I'll be home baking things and trying to decide if I want to set up my giant skeleton or not. So
Allie, what are you working on next?
I am currently on deadline for Mystery James Digs Her Own Grave 2, which is actually called Mystery James Returns from the Grave. If you buy Mystery James 1, I think there's a preview for Mystery James 2 in the book. So I'm just working on that, trying to make my deadline. I also have another book coming out called Down Came the Spiders. That's coming out. It's technically out in Scholastic book fairs right now, but it is releasing to the general public, I think, in December. So you'll be able to like walk into a bookstore and get it in December. Or if you have kids, you can go to their school book fair. So that's coming out. And then I'm just working on other stuff, like the next project. I'm trying to see if I want to branch outside of middle grade, experimenting with like new monsters and exploring new settings.
Can you tell us a little bit about your Wednesday book?
Book of Outcasts is out. That came out in May. So if you're a fan of Nevermore Academy and you want to know like a little more about like the inner workings of the school, you can check out Book of Outcasts. I had a blast writing it. I told my editor, I feel like I trained my whole life as a mostly straight A student for that assignment because it just it just involved like watching the show over and over and over and over again, and then writing about all the fun stuff that like I got to see on screen. So, and I'm a big Wednesday fan. I've loved Wednesday since, I was a kid. So it's a dream come true for me.
How did that opportunity come about?
They knew that they wanted to write a Wednesday book, and my agent is really awesome. She has they're kind of like resumes of things that you love, stuff that you want to work on. Mine is all spooky stuff, of course, like X-Files and Beetlejuice and Wednesday and like all that stuff. So the editor, she had shared my resume, I think, with the editor, and the editor was like, well, would Allie be interested in working on this Wednesday book? And said yes, and that was kind of it.
Perfect. Where can our listeners find you online?
I am mostly on Instagram these days at One Dark Alley, Alley spelled ALLY, or you can go to my website, allierussellbooks.com. I'm trying to make the internet fun again. So like there's cryptid stories there. I need to like add some ghost stories for Mystery James, but like there are fun facts about me. I write blog posts there, so you can comment on blog posts. I love talking to people on blog posts, but mostly Instagram. So.
Allie, thank you for coming back on the show, and thanks for inviting us into the world of Mystery James.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's fun.
Thanks for listening. Please subscribe and follow. We're now on YouTube. Links are in the show notes. You can find me at jeffccarter.com and hit the link to pick up my collection, We Bleed Orange and Black, 31 fun-sized tales for Halloween. Until next time, stay spooktacular